Welcome to this episode of Tech Threads. I'm your host, Max Watson, and today I talked with Jesse Harding, who is the head of product at Luna Park, about some lessons he learned while working at early stage companies. Well, Jesse, welcome to Tech Threads. Glad we could have you on
Glad
tonight.
to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we got an awesome episode as we've been chatting before filming this, kind of talking about your experience in kind of like early stage companies and kind of how that has been. But before we jump into that, could you kind of give a little overview for the people who don't know you, which is kind of few and far between, but could you kind of give a little overview about who you are, what you do, and kind of what you've been working on lately?
Yeah. So, name's Jesse Harding. I came to product by way of design. So, started out my career as a designer, and moved into product about 15 years ago. I've kind of straddled product and design for most of my career. And that's been fun. Like I love design, and when I moved over to product, I wanted to kind of keep that, the aesthetic side of things. So have been able to work for, like you said, a number of early stage startups. We'll talk a little bit more about that
Mhm.
in the conversation. Right now, I'm working for a company called Luna Park. We do team building software. So for all of you who are working remote and don't get to connect with your employees or with your coworkers like you would if you're working in an office, we try to, we build a software that is all about bringing you together and creating that connection. Really fun. At the end of last quarter, we started working into kind of the learning space and taking like everything we've learned on the engagement side into corporate learning. We found like corporate learning is a pretty dry space, and so we've got a lot of experience making things fun, and so we're bringing that into corporate learning. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I remember you posted it was a couple days ago or like last week about like a prototype that you guys had with AI and like slideshows, which I did, which was super awesome. I think that's a really
Yeah,
cool thing to
yeah. Thanks for
do.
checking that out. Yeah, that's one of our goals is to be AI first. And what we found is like in the learning space, there are a ton of kind of these old LMSs that maybe they're trying to bolt AI on, but they're not really AI first. And so we're really going after as much as possible to make it feel like you have a tutor who's there with
Mhm.
you during the course. It's been super fun. Like great small team that I work with, and we're just moving fast and trying all kinds of new things. So lots of fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. I really loved about it just the idea of like being able to ask questions mid like video. Like I
Right.
know I watch a lot of YouTube videos and they like will start one subject, leave it. I have so many questions, but in your prototype that you have, you can just like ask away. And I can like pause the video
Yeah.
and just ask like 100 questions and just get so much more information that I actually needed. So that was really cool.
That's
Um,
actually how we came up with that idea was
yeah.
because we're like trying to consume as much learning content as we can. And that the YouTube video was kind of what gave us that idea was like, man, what if you could pause this video and just talk to this expert who's
Mhm.
teaching you this content? So yeah, it's I think that demo that I posted is pretty exciting. We're obviously, we've got more to do there, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. So tell me about kind of your experience working at early stage startups. What have you learned and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I got my first tech job in college was with a startup, very like an early stage. This is the dot-com boom, so this is a long time ago, and we like imploded spectacularly, like completely died. But uh, after that, I was like, okay, I guess this startup thing isn't for me. I'm gonna go work for like a safe Silicon Valley company and a software company. So I did that. And I actually, for about 8 years, worked for a couple different larger companies. And I found that I missed the chaos. Like I missed. I think like one of my slogans is like being comfortable is overrated. I think like in that chaos, when you're pushing yourself, that's where so much growth happens. And so I really missed the feeling like every day I was making an impact, wearing lots of hats, and just like that kind of skin in the game feeling. And I found like over time, like where I really thrive is like a company whose ARR is like in the hundreds of thousands or even less. that pre $1 million annual revenue and trying to get them above that $1 million line. That's like the hardest. Like if you can get past that, I mean, obviously there's more challenges after that, but that product market fit stage is really fun. So I've had like um, four shots at it. The first two were total disasters, and the second two have been pretty fun. Luna Park and one other that that I've learned a lot and just had some fun experiences. So yeah, I think what I wanted to share were just a couple. I've got kind of three points that I think are really important if you're working early stage. But I think they apply well to larger companies as well. I think they're also something that maybe gets lost as a company grows. And so that's kind of where I wanted to focus these three key factors.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get into it. Tell us about this. We'd
Cool.
love to hear about them.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I think the first one is just clear objectives. Um, and these objectives should be measurable. And I'm always surprised, like even talking to folks at companies large and small, a lot of times the like shipping the thing becomes the objective, and it's not measurable other than just like, yeah, we shipped it. And that's how you can really get in kind of a cycle where you're just a feature factory, just shipping, 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 and not really feeling any impact. And I found like for sure for product people, designers as well, but especially for engineers, it's really nice to know that all this effort you're putting in is actually doing something measurable.
Mhm.
So having measurable goals, with early stage startups, like a lot of times your funding is pretty low, and running out fast, and so every second counts, and so you have to have alignment within the company. Luna Park has less than 20 people. We've got 16 people. And so like we need to make sure that every person is working towards the same goal, and kind of knows where the company is. Obviously across different departments, the goals are slightly different, but they should be cohesive. And so we do quarterly goals, which I think is pretty common, but they're measurable, and each person kind of knows what they're working towards. Another thing we do is I call it WPM, weekly progress meeting. We have a weekly meeting where the whole company gets in. Obviously, it's a small company, like I mentioned, but we go through our objectives, and each person who owns an objective presents a dashboard, mixed panel, wherever they have it, but presents a dashboard on the progress for that week. That keeps the whole company, in tune with everything going on and the progress being made. And also, again, small startup, so it's like everybody can pitch in and help when things aren't going as you hoped or planned.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you have any, I mean, like, I feel like some PMs might struggle with finding these like measurable objectives. Do you have any advice for them on how they can find those and get kind of team alignment around those objectives?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think like there's a few that kind of always work. There's adoption and engagement are kind of the go-tos. So
Mhm.
like if you're releasing a new feature, just look at how many people are using it, and then engagement, just kind of ongoing engagement. Something that people sometimes get hung up on is like we don't have a baseline. And so,
Mhm.
how do you even set the goal when you don't have a baseline? And I personally think it's fine to just say, we're not going to set a goal here, but we're going to track these specific metrics, and we're going to watch them over the quarter. And that will give you the baseline potentially for next quarter.
Right. Do you have any advice as well for like PMs out there who might have a hard time figuring out what metrics they should be watching when it comes to like identifying growth areas? Do you have any like things that you do or that your company does that helps you identify what will really like move the needle in the right direction?
Yeah, so you're asking like how do you know which metrics will actually matter to the business?
Right. Yeah. Do you have any
Yeah.
like things that you do to make sure those metrics you pick are the ones that actually move?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think like at the end of the day, and this sometimes feels like something dirty to say, but like revenue matters, like especially early stage, like we're burning through our funding so quickly, and it's like we've got to get revenue. And so
Mhm.
so at the end of the day, like your metrics should at least be leading indicators to revenue. Obviously, there's also metrics on the side of like customer value. I think
Mhm.
Dan Lawyer from Lucid says like product manager's job is like the intersection between business and customer and like making sure that you're kind of moving metrics on both sides. So that's where I would start is like what are the things at that intersection that are going to make our customers happy, um, but also drive revenue on our side, whether that's through adoption, new signups, all of that kind of stuff. I think the other thing I would say, I guess, is talking to your customer service team and your sales team if you have one. Like, what are those, what's being asked for? What are the problems that existing customers are running into and finding ways to fix those? Because retention is another big one. If you've got customers and you're losing them, that's rough because it's so hard to get that original customer. You got to keep those customers that you get. So
Yeah.
finding out what can keep that, what what events customers are doing that create retention that keep them around, and then how do you make sure that more customers are doing, each of those activities.
Right. And I feel like a lot of PMs might feel more like siloed because I really like the point that you mentioned of like going to your like customer success team or your sales team to actually get more user, like closer user contact information. Because I feel like a lot of PMs have mentioned to me about being like, they feel like they're the ones who have to decide it and figure it out. And they kind of like do it by themselves rather than going out and getting more feedback. Like I know in my experience, like as an engineer, like we just did prod support because we rolled out 2 weeks ago. And like the stuff I learned in prod support, like helping actual users solve
Yeah,
problems and get over bugs, was like blew my mind to like how I design the rest of like the solutions that I make now, knowing just a little bit more about
for
how,
sure.
the customers work.
Get on customer support calls. Like I think this is something that Weave did really well. When I worked at Weave, like we could go in and just sit with customer support and listen in on calls,
Mhm.
and it was super powerful. At Luna Park, I for the first year I was here, I did all of our onboarding calls. So I was like the one on
Yeah.
the customer calls, onboarding new customers. Like the value there is just incredible. Like you get so much, and that's where you start. I mean, another thing with I guess to kind of go to the second point is
Yeah.
like speed to learning. Um, and speed to learning, like you don't, especially early stage, you don't always have data. And you have to start to trust your gut. Because if you're early stage, you probably don't have enough customer data. And the reality is even like a mid-stage company, sometimes there's not enough data to really make like solid decisions on the data. You still have to use some gut. And so yeah, sitting in on customer support calls, these onboarding calls were so good for me to start to build that gut where I could like
Mhm.
start to make decisions based on just like, yeah, I've talked to 20 customers who mentioned this, and you start to see those trends, so that you can make those decisions and also know, yeah, what is the metric that we should be moving.
Yeah. I read a book last summer, like geared towards project management. There's two books actually. One's called Sprint, and then the other one is called Lean
Is
Customer
that the
Development.
Google the Google one, Sprint
I think so. I think he worked with
by
Google.
Google
It's
Ventures? Yeah,
Yeah, it's like basically
it's a
the
good
idea
book.
of it is like you have like these guys will go into these companies and then they'll have like a week to build, launch,
Yeah,
and test a product. And they say like the first day is just like ideation and then like validation, and then you have like a prototype, and then like the last 2 days are like actually getting it out in front of people and tweaking it. And they just like swore by that method. And it's kind of like along what you were
yeah,
saying, like getting it, doing it quick, because sometimes you won't have that info, but getting something quick that doesn't like take up too much of your time. I'm sure, especially at like an early stage company where time is very valuable, like you said. Like being able to
yeah.
validate quickly, I'm sure is like a big deal.
Exactly.
Do you
Yeah.
have
Speed to learning is key. And I think like the bigger the company, the slower product development can go. But it doesn't have to. Like
Mhm.
I think this sprint is a really good, I've done that at larger companies. Take a week, get a decent group of like cross-functional folks,
Mhm.
not just product design and engineering. And like the goal is like ship something by the end of the week. And it,
Yeah.
yeah, super fun.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you've done at Luna Park or in past companies that have helped you do that quick learning?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is breaking your features into shippable, like small shippable pieces. And I think it's huge, and it's also, I mean, you hear that all the time. Like it's kind of,
Oh,
did
sorry.
I
I think I
lose you?
lost you for a
I'm
second. Yeah.
back. Yeah, I'm
You're back
back.
though. We're back.
So yeah, I was saying breaking features into small pieces
hmm
is critical, and it's also, you know, as cliche as it is. It doesn't happen that often. Like you have kind of this feature, you have this big idea, and it's very hard to figure out how do we ship something like weekly or even quicker than that, and how do we break this into small pieces? You know, what's the smallest thing that we can ship? Start getting feedback because again, it's speed to learning. Like you have to get stuff out quickly. Um, and so that's one of the things I would say is like break that feature up into as small of pieces as you can, and then actually ship stuff to production and get it out there and start learning. You know, I mean, I mentioned like, you know, sometimes at a small startup, you've only got 6 months of funding, so you can't take 3 months on a feature. Like you have to you have to get it out
Right.
quickly, and you have to get it out in a way that you're going to learn something from it, that you can like quickly turn that into you know, knowledge that you can take into the next thing you ship.
Right. How do you, because I know from my experience, like whenever we ship new features or products, we always do like a lot of like testing. I mean, mainly because a lot of the stuff we do is like financial stuff. Like you can't really mess
Sure.
that stuff up. You don't want to like, you can't just break it and be like, oh, but we always are like focused on like making sure our perception by our users is like as high as it can be. And so I feel like we're kind of slower on shipping things out. Is there a balance between like shipping fast and getting data versus like holding up kind of like a company face? And how do you kind of like balance that?
Yeah, yeah. And it definitely, like if you've got secure data, there's obviously some steps that you have to take. I worked at Now, which was a fintech company, and we had, you know, when you're dealing with PPI or anything like that, there's obviously some QA steps that you have to take. Um, I think one thing though is, so at Luna Park we have a customer advisory board, and they're kind of our guinea pigs, and they know they are. And we had this at Nav, that, you know, like I said, fintech company. So that's where like feature flags or some kind of you know, system where you can release to some customers but not all, where
Mm,
you can get that feature out and get it live in customers' hands. I find personally like I you know, I've done like prototype tests and all of that where you design a prototype and show it to a customer, but nothing gets you like real feedback like actually changing the product that they're using.
hmm
Um, and so that's always my goal is like, let's, yeah, maybe we'll show them some designs, you know, that's what a customer advisory group is great for that as well. But let's get stuff in their hands as quick as we possibly can, and get their real feedback. Um, at Weave, so Weave does communications for dentists and medical professionals. And
hmm
we were like we, you know, you go for like, we hope we're a weekly usage company or product. Weave was daily. Weave was like hourly. Like the receptionists and that team were using our product every minute of their job. So we found out really quickly if we did something wrong. But it was great. Like you'd get such quick feedback. And having that team that you can test with is super valuable there.
Right. Is that something that your company kind of organized in a way, or is that something that you kind of like headed and being like, like, hey, we need this kind of guinea pig group? Or like, what does that look like for people out there, maybe if they don't have
Yeah,
that sort of
I've done
group?
it both ways. So
Mhm.
at Luna Park specifically, the founders, one of the founders actually reached out to, you know, he kind of runs the advisory board, but I think it's very possible for product to lead that as well. And I've done that at other companies. And it really is just finding those customers. You want kind of a demographically, you want um, some diversity there so that you're not
Hmm.
talking to all of them aren't a specific persona or specific archetype. You want some different sizes of customers, depending, obviously it depends on what type of customers you have. But yeah, I think like it's debatable whether you should compensate them or not. Some people say, it taints the learning if you do. We do something at the very first. We give them actually a small amount of shares, or
Hmm.
options, but very small. But yeah, I mean that's a that's a convert. Don't let that kind of stuff get in the way of like just getting customers that you can talk to on a regular basis.
Right. And I'm sure in any user group, you can probably find people who are like super champions of your products
For
who are
sure.
more than
Yeah.
happy to like be that guinea pig and get the newest stuff. So,
Yeah.
kind of moving on, like what was your third point
Yeah,
that
so
you'd like to
the
share tonight? Yeah.
the third point is no time for egos. You
Mm.
just at a small stage early stage, fast pace, you cannot hire people with egos. And I think as a company grows, like they tend to hire the experts, or I call them like the grown-ups. I don't consider myself a grown-up. But you kind of bring in the been there, done that person who's like going to help take you to the next level. And I've seen that really hurt companies. Like I think from a speed
Mhm.
perspective, it can slow things down. But the around no egos is just like getting really good at recognizing the best solution, and
Mhm.
also just recognizing that it's usually a combination of a lot of people's ideas. It's very rarely one person's idea. It's even less commonly your own idea.
Mhm.
So just get really comfortable with like being able to recognize good solutions. Again, it's all about speed. So it's like we gotta, sometimes you do just have to disagree and commit and move on so that you can get that learning, speed to learning as quick as possible. Another thing along those lines is just like um, and this is like, this took me a long time to come to terms with, but like, stop fearing feedback. You got to get it as quick as possible. You mentioned kind of
Mhm.
feeling like you're in a silo. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes we do that to ourselves. Like we kind of want to be the Steve Jobs. Like we want to go, into the cave and come out with the iPhone or whatever, and everybody will cheer and put us on their shoulders. And I think like um, you got to just get feedback. Like figure out a way to schedule feedback into your weekly schedule so that you can be getting it. I like my fear with feedback, and this came from like my days as a designer. Like if I go get feedback, they're gonna make me change it, and I like this. Like I don't want to change it. But that's exactly why you need to show it to them, because um, you know, so often it's super valid. And obviously you don't have to action every piece of feedback, but I think you do need to hear it. And so that not fearing feedback may not always feel like an ego thing, but I think it actually is. Like I think it's like
Right.
I like what I've come up with and I don't want to change it. And obviously there's a balance there because I'm talking about speed. How do you balance speed and feedback? But that's where I say like if you schedule it into your weekly flow, we've got a couple different meetings during the week where we present specs to engineers, and then we present specs to kind of the business side of the team, and we just like it's just like tear this apart. Let's get the feedback
Mhm.
so that we can quickly action it and get this out in customers' hands.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because my wife is like a book cover illustrator and she'll like design these book covers that she loves and then she like it's kind of
I
like a
love
hesitant
that. What
thing
a
to
cool
like send
job.
it. I know it's a sweet job and so she'll like get really like have an idea of hers that she loves and then the author will kind of like want to change some things or like add some things or take away some things and it's always kind of like like I
It
built this I
hurts.
love this. How do
Yeah.
you I mean like I've also read that like as you get more experience you sometimes kind of push out new ideas and they're like, okay, this has worked for me. I'm going to keep doing this. How do you kind of push away that like creeping ego and make sure that you're always like fresh to new ideas and willing to change things?
I think I think it goes back to measurable impact. Like if you're able to measure the impact that the things you're shipping have, it's it's pretty easy to quickly see like the things that are having the most impact are the things that the whole team, contributed to. And I think that's true almost every time. I had a specific spec that I was working on a couple months ago, and it had like a ton of revisions, and we were doing these revisions quickly. But when you looked, we use Figma for our specs, and so this Figma
Mhm.
file was just like so full of revisions. And I remember the founder said like, wow, like this, like you've put a lot of work into this and a lot of it's just gotten trash. Like, how are you feeling? Like just kind of doing a check-in. And I was like, you know what? Like I've found like the best solutions we ship are the ones where the spec looks like this. Like, because
Mhm.
it means like, first off, it means people were passionate about the solution, but it also means like we got a lot of good feedback on this, and I feel really good about getting this out into customers' hands. So um, it's always gonna hurt. Like I mean, like
Mhm.
it does. Like that ego is just, I think, a natural part of us, and especially like your wife doing illustration. Like when you're like pouring your creative soul into something, and then you kind of get attached to it. But they always say like fall in love with the the problem, not the solution, and
Mhm.
um, that's easier said than done sometimes. But I do think when if you start keeping track of the impact you're having, and make that your focus, then it's a little bit easier to let go of your ideas when you recognize that someone's feedback is actually going to help you hit that metric, and make that the thing you're passionate about is that impact instead of like the specific solution.
Right. Do you have anything you've done to kind of create that culture, which can kind of be difficult, like the culture of like everyone embrace feedback no matter what, like let's move on. How have you created that sort of culture in the teams that you run?
Yeah, I think it comes down to openness. Like again, like I think our natural in like creative spaces, and I think product management is a very creative space, but coming from a design
Mhm.
background as well. Like being super transparent about what you're working on. When I worked at Nav, we had a big board. I think this is pretty common. Actually, we did it at Weave as well, but we called it Cerebro, which is like the X-Men, like the room that Professor X goes into to see everything. And the idea was just like, let's create like hyper transparency on what we're working on. And so it's basically like a giant Kanban board. And
Mhm.
we would do, put specs or PRDs up on the wall as it progressed along the different steps. We would add images to it, and the idea was just like we got to welcome this feedback. Like people are going to have feedback either way. Earlier you can get it, the better. And we also just want like I find like sometimes when you're transparent like that, then it's like sometimes less feedback comes through because it's like, okay, I know what's going on, and I don't feel like I have to kind of try to butt myself into this process. So um, that's one thing at least is just getting really comfortable. I said like schedule it, like you got to
Mhm.
have like scheduled times for feedback so that you just get really used to it. Yeah, I mean, like in art school, I didn't go to art school, but in art school, I know designers that I've worked with. They just get they they just like get them so trained to get feedback. Like they'll give
Mhm.
them really harsh feedback in front of the whole group, and it really hurts for a while. And then after a while, hopefully it hurts a little less. Maybe not because it's
Yeah.
it's always like trashing something that you love. But I think that's it. I think just get comfortable with it, do it as much as possible, and then again, like track the results. Like look at what getting feedback does.
Right. And I think that's such a good and really cool idea of being completely visible and just like opening it. And I know like I played basketball growing up till like even in college. And after a certain point, you kind of get numb to the feedback. Like as you get
Yeah.
higher and like in high school, your coach starts getting on you more and then you play like club and they're like really on you. And then it kind of becomes numb. And then when you get to like higher levels, coaches are even more like nitpicky and it kind of
Hmm.
becomes like something you enjoy hearing
For
because you're like,
sure.
oh, I'd love to hear like what you have to think. Like I have my own ideas, but like tell me, like I want to get better and
And
learn.
I
So that's
think
really
in that
cool.
example, like I would imagine that feedback you got made you a better player. Like
Oh,
it,
100%.
it
Yeah.
hurts, but it also like if you can look at like the the result, it's like okay, it's making me a better player. It's making our product solutions better. So
Yeah.
um
Oh, 100%. I even, because my journey was kind of interesting because I started out playing junior college basketball and then later transitioned to where
nice.
I played at Cornell. And so it was interesting to see the kids who could also transition from like a lower junior college level. And it was always the ones who could take feedback better. I had a lot of
For
teammates
sure.
who were like very hard nosed and wouldn't like, they always thought like, oh, I know everything. Like I'm not listening to coach or any of our like skills people. Like I'm not going to take it. And they were always the ones who like hindered themselves almost in the
Yeah.
process and were never able
Yeah.
to like really achieve anything amazing because they wouldn't allow this feedback. And then I can see the total opposite of my teammates who were like super feedback people. Like they
Just
just
eat it
loved
up.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're like go high major, like they're all at these like NIL deals, like pro bound. And it's just cool. It's just interesting to see. So I'm sure that's like the same kind of thing in
Yeah, I
product.
love
Just
that. And I mean,
yeah.
you'll get horrible feedback. Like it's not to say like
Right.
all the feedback you get is good or that you should
Hmm.
action all of it. You're gonna get like just stupid ideas and you have to just that's
Right.
where the diplomacy of product management comes in is just like, you know, being being gracious with all the feedback you get. And then ultimately like you're the decision maker, you get to
Hmm.
decide what am I actually gonna do with this feedback.
Right. And I think that's a great way because I know we're kind of coming up on time. That's a great way to like cap kind of the three main points that you've had tonight with
Cool.
your early stage startups. Um, but Jesse, I just want to thank you again for coming on. This has been great. I feel like we didn't
Yeah,
even hit like
yeah.
a
Had a
third of
great
our points
time.
that we kind of wanted to talk about. So maybe we'll have to do like a follow-up part two episode and talk
Yeah,
about that second
I'm
half of what
down
we were
for
doing.
sure.
Yeah, but I really appreciate it. Thanks again. I know the UPG community is excited for this, and there's a lot of value that can be found in this episode. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks Max so much for having me on.